Hello everyone again, and today we're continuing with the story of Joseph. And again, this is a recorded class, and just to make sure that everybody knows, a recorded class is agreed upon in advance with all participants. Normally, classes are not recorded. So we are in Genesis chapter 42, and we are in we're starting from verse 18. So just to recap, so the brothers arriving in Egypt, they're standing in front of Joseph, and Joseph is blaming them for being spies. They, of course, deny it, and he says, okay, what we are going to do, you are going to be in jail, or at least one of you will be in jail, while the other will go and bring the young brother, Benjamin, who stayed with the father. If you bring him here, Benjamin, I will know that you are correct, that you are right, that you are not spies. If you do not do that, I will assume that you are spies and treat you accordingly. And we continue from verse 18. So now they are all sitting in jail. Vayomer elehem Yosef bayom hashlishi. And Joseph told them on the third day that since they were put in jail. Zot asu v'chayu. I'm telling you what you are going to do, so I will keep you alive. Et ha'elohim ani yareh. I fear God. And this is, of course, a very interesting statement. The brother thinks that Joseph is an Egyptian person, but he wants to give them the confidence that he is a person of his word. And the reason that they should trust him, that he is going to do what he promises them, is because he fears God. And he continues, Im kenimatem can come from to say yes, to say the truth. Kene is somebody who tells the truth. In kenimatem, if you are telling the truth. Achichem echad ye'aser bebet mishmarchem. Now he's making the condition even easier than before. Now, I don't want all of you to be in jail and want to go and bring Benjamin. Only one of you will stay in jail as a hostage. Ve'atem lechu haviu, and you will go and bring him. Shever avon betechem, and take food to your household, to shever avon, to be able to break the starvation, the famine, the hunger in your homes. So he's making them an offer. I'll give you food. You came to break. After all, in the first place, you came here to get food. I'll give you this food. You will go back to your home. One of you will stay hostage because I'm not sure that you are not spies. But if you do what I tell you, I will know that you are not spies. So you'll take food to your home. Ve'et achichem hakatan taviu elai, and you will bring to me your youngest brother. Vaya'amnu divrechem velo tamutu. If you do that, I will believe what you are saying, which means I will believe that you are not spies, velo tamutu, and I will not kill you. Vayasu ken. And that's what they decided to do. That's what they were going to do. Vayomru ish el echav. And then they were talking among themselves. They talked to each other. Aval ashemim anachnu al achinu. It's all happening to us because we are guilty about what we did to our brother, to Joseph. Asher ra'inu tzarat nafsho. Because we saw how distressed he was, how upset he was, how he was suffering, tzarat nafsho, the suffering of his spirit. בהתחנננו אלינו. When he begged to us, ולא שמענו, and we didn't listen to him. This is very interesting, because if you remember, they were joking about Joseph when they threw him into the pit. One of the only places in the Bible that there is a joke, there is a sense of humor. They were joking among themselves when they threw Joseph into the pit. And the Bible tells us they're very simple. They threw into the pit, and the Ishmaelite came. They saw it to the Ishmaelite, and the Ishmaelite left with us. The Bible does not mention anywhere there what Joseph was like. You know, Joseph is the man of God. We think about Joseph as an adult, as a righteous man, as a man with a lot of strength. But at that time, he was 16. What happened to Joseph when they threw him into the pit? Was he just quiet? He accepted it? It never tells us. And we hardly ever think about it. We just go through these verses in the Bible, the threw him, the sold him, and we never think about what happened to Joseph. And this is the only word that says what happened to Joseph when he was in the pit. Behitchaneno eleinu. When he was begging to us, and it gives us a very clear picture. When they threw him into the pit, Joseph did not accept it quietly. He was begging, he was crying, he was distressed, he was upset. Velo shamanu, and we didn't listen to him. This is the one word that tells us how distressed Joseph was when he was thrown into the pit. Of course, when we think about it, it's obvious. Every single person would be distressed in this situation. But the Bible barely mentions it, only hinting it here. So it's not that they were joking and they were forgetting and, it was easy. He was in the pit screaming. That's how the Ishmaelites and the Midianites heard him. He was screaming, he was crying. But the brothers just, decided to shut their ears and hearts and not listen to him. But now all of a sudden they recall it and they say, Al ken ba eleinu hatzara hazot. The troubles that we are having now is because of what we did to Joseph. That's many years ago. Vayan Reuven otam lemor. And then Reuven said to them, and if you remember, Reuven is the one that wanted them to stop it. But he wasn't strong enough to say, we are not going to do it. We're not going to throw him in the pit. He has a good heart. He has a good intention, but he wasn't strong. All he said, Reuven, at the time, he said, oh, let's just basically not kill him. Let's sell him. And the Bible tells us that Reuven was planning to take him out of the pit and bring him back to his father. He had a good intention. He didn't have the strength of a leader. And that's, I believe, the reason that Reuven, the eldest brother, will never became the leader of the tribes. And here again, and he tells them, Halo amarti lachem lemor al tachteu bayeled. I told you so. This is not what a leader say. This is somebody who is right, but he's not a leader. A leader will never say, I told you so. This is not the word of somebody with power over others. So what did he say? Al tachteu bayeled. Don't sin towards the child. And here it's interesting, because if you look at the translation translates, do not sin against the child. The word chet, tachteu, is you will sin. Chet is a sin. So here it's interesting, because here sin is translated correctly. In many places in the Bible, in the English Bible, if it's a sin against God, it will translate as sin. If it's a sin against a person, it will translate as fault, misbehaved, everything except for sin. So it's interesting that it took the word sin. And there is a reason to that. It's not coincidental. Nearly always, in the English translation, they refer to the two things as separate. What I do to a person is less than the bad thing I do towards God. The Hebrew Bible does not look at it like this. For the Hebrew Bible, sin is a sin. If you sin against a person or you sin against God, both are sins, both are severe. And if you look at the prophet Jeremiah, Isaiah, for instance, you will discover that actually it's the opposite. You can sin against God as much as you want. You are not going to harm God by doing that. You can't harm God. You can disappoint God, but there's nothing bad you can do to God. So God will forgive you for your sin when you repent of them. But when you sin against a person, you hurt the person. You can hurt him emotionally, physically, financially. You can even kill a person. So in the Hebrew Bible and in the Jewish tradition, God cannot forgive you for sins against other people. You first have to go and ask forgiveness from the person. And if the person cannot be asked because maybe he's dead, you have to go to his family, to the last of kin, to do things to compensate of the sin that you commit against a person. Only then you can go and God will forgive you. So sin against people is much more severe than sin against God. And this is a very important point, and I've had a lot of discussions about it, because I often hear the discussion that when Jesus came, the old rules of the Bible became abolished. He abolished them. And there are many ways of doing it. And Catholic have the way, and Protestant have the way, and Jewish have the way as well. It's basically, I sin, I have a process, whether it's a confession or whether accepting Jesus to my heart or whether it's some kind of a prayer. Everybody has the process of clearing your load of sins. And you start afresh. And then you go back, you sin again, and you start afresh. And as long as you basically repented the day before you died, you're good. Or the moment before you died, you're good. You'll get to heaven. But this is not what the Bible really says. God, Jesus, the prayers cannot clear yourself from sin against people. You have to go, you have to do that. It's the hardest thing to do. If you harm somebody and he's dead, go to his family, ask forgiveness there. Now, if they don't accept forgiveness, you've done everything that you could have. God, then you can repent. But you can't just go sin against people and ask forgiveness from God and assume that everything is cleared from you. That's not what the Hebrew Bible tells us. So here, Reubens says, Al tachteu bayeled. I told you not to sin against the child. Velo shamatem. And you didn't listen. Vegam damo. And his blood, hineni drash. Now we have to pay for his blood. Vehem lo yadu ki shamea Yosef. And they didn't know that Joseph was listening. Ki hamelitz beinotam. For the interpreter was between them. Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense. If the interpreter is between them, then they wouldn't speak freely. But what it means actually is something very different. I think that it has to make sense. And especially the story of Joseph has to make sense. It speaks very clearly. There is not a lot of hidden things. It tells a story because it's an important story and it wants us to understand it. It's not cryptic here. What's he say? That Joseph, what does it mean the interpreter was between them? Not now when they were speaking. It means that Joseph spoke Egyptian to them through an interpreter. So they didn't recognize Joseph. They didn't know that Joseph speaks Hebrew. So Joseph spoke to them through an interpreter. The interpreter spoke to Hebrew. Now they were standing there. The interpreter was not there anymore. He's left. And then, of course, they wouldn't even consider, they wouldn't even think that the second most powerful person in Egypt would speak the language of some kind of a remote periphery of Canaan. It was not an important place. It was just a small place in the outskirts, far from Egypt. Why would the second most powerful person in Egypt speak this language? So when you say ki hamalitz beinotam, it means that when they were speaking to Joseph, there was an interpreter. Joseph was speaking to them through the interpreter. Now the interpreter left. And they were speaking freely. They didn't understand. They didn't realize that Joseph could hear and understand them. Vayasav me'alehem vayivach. So Joseph left them because he needed to cry. He's a human. He's most powerful. And it doesn't matter how powerful you are. And it doesn't matter what game you play, how you treat people. He is still human, completely human, with emotions. He feels towards his family. He knows that, okay, we can discuss why he does it to them. Does he do it to them because he has a plan, or just because he's still human and he needs to inflict some pain on them as a sort of small revenge before he could establish relationship? He needs to put them under distress so they feel the distress that we felt. I don't know. Some people say that he's very calculated. I think the Bible just wants to show us that he's human. So he's playing a game with them. He wants to give them some hard time. But he sees his brothers and he sees them in their pain, their fear. So he's turning around, going to another room to cry. Vayashav elehem, and he came back to them. Vayedaber elehem, and he spoke to them. Vayikach mi'itam et Shimon, and he took Shimon from the group. Vayasor oto le'einehem, and he arrested him in front of their eyes. Vayatzav Yosef, and Joseph gave a command. Vayemal'u et klehem bar, and they filled their vessels with bar, with grain. This is very interesting that the translations say corn. It can't be corn. There was no corn in the old world. Corn is a new world type of grain. So when you say bar, it's a wheat, it's barley, and we know that Egypt used to be the basin of wheat in the old world. So the translation here, I don't think it's that critical, but just be aware that there is no corn, there was not corn in Egypt at that time. So Joseph gave a command to fill the vessels with grain. After all, they came to pick up food to save their houses from starvation. And the most condensed food you could carry with you, of course, it's grain, wheat grain. You can make pita bread, or at that time it was like a pita bread. It's, with a bit, if they have the sheep, just, with a bit of cheese, which is not what we call today cheese. The cheese that the Bedouin, the people of the desert, it's very, very solid. It's like a rock. You put it in water, and then you can have it with a bit of bread, and it can keep you alive for days. And you can see the people of the desert going, a bit of a small pack of wheat, a bowl of cheese, a water, and they know that they can walk the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. It's amazing. And he also gave a command, lahashiv kaspeim, to give them back their money. Ish el sako, every person give it back and put it in his sack, in his bag. He also commanded, velatet lahem tzedal derech, give them food, provision for the way back. Vayas lahem ken. And they did. Whoever he commanded, he ordered to do, and they did that. Vayas lahem ken. And what he commanded happened. Vaisu et shivram al chamorehem. So they took all the provisions, all the pork that they took on their donkeys. Va'elchu misham, and they left from there. Vaiftach ha'echad et sako, and one of them opened his sack, opened his bag. Latet mispo lechamoro b'malon, to give some hay to his donkey when they reached the hotel, b'malon, in the hotel. Vayar et kaspo, and he saw his money. והנה הוא בפי אמתחתו. And it's the opening at the top level of his bag. Now, if you think about it, the bags of the donkeys, it's like a big sack opening at the top, normally with a rope that ties them. So just open it and it was there at the top, which means that Joseph gave them here the money and they were not aware of it. Of course, they knew that he gave them grain, they knew that he gave them the provision, but to bring them the money back, he did it stealthily. They didn't know that. Vayar et kaspo, and he saw his money. Vehine hu befi amtachato, and it is the open of his bag. Vayomer elechav, and he told to his brother, Hushav kaspi, vegam hine beamtachati. My money was returned to me, and look at it, it's in my bag. Vayetze lebam, and they got afraid. Yetze lebam. They were so afraid. It's kind of, I'm sure that we all know this feeling, that we are so afraid, that we are so stressed, we are so anguished, that we feel like our heart is leaving our body. It's just, our body cannot contain it. Vayetze lebam, the heart got out. This is a very beautiful expression, I think, to describe this feeling of dread, of fear. Vayachredu ish el achiv lemor, and they were talking to each other fearfully. Ma zot asa Elohim lanu. All of a sudden, they relate what they did to Joseph, to a punishment for God. What is God doing to us? We are getting punished here. Vayavo el Yaakov avihem, arza Canaan. And they came to Jacob, the father, in the land of Canaan. Vayagidu lo et kol hakorot itam lemor. And they told him everything that happened to them. Diber ha'ish adonai haaretz, the man, the master of the land, spoke to us. Kashot, he spoke to us harshly. Vaiten otanu kemeraglim et haaretz, and he considered us to be spies on the land. Vanomar elav, and we told him, kenim anachnu. Lo hayinu meraglim. We are honest. We are not spies. 12 anachnu achim. We are 12 brothers. Bnei avinu, the sons of our father. Of course, they have different mothers. Ha'echad eineno. One of them does not exist. Now, the word eineno is an interesting word. It doesn't mean dead, but in English we do it as well. We don't like to say dead. So we say he's not here, he passed. So einenu, yeah, it means he's not here, but you use it as a euphemistic way to say dead. V'hakatan hayom et avinu be'eretz Canaan. And the little one today is with our fathers in the land of Canaan. And if you don't remember, Canaan, it's just another name for the land of Israel. Vayomer elenu ha'ish adonai haaretz, and the man who is the master of the land said, Bazot eda ki enim atem. By this I'm going to know that you are honest. Achechem ha'echad hanichu iti, live with me, one of your brothers. Well, sounds nice, but basically, I'm taking one of you as a hostage. And you'll take with you the food of the land. The food for your homes. I'll give you food and take it to your homes. And bring your little brother to me. And I will know that you are not spies. That you are telling the truth. If you do so, I'll give you back your brothers. I'll give you back Shimon, who is now in jail. But more than that, I will allow you to trade. commit trade with my land, with Egypt. And you have to remember, that's a huge thing. Egypt was the richest land in the whole ancient world. They had everything. And they are going to get a license to trade with that. You know, trade is what built countries. Trade what built wealth. And so it's not, you're just going, I'll give you a brother, I know. I will treat you really well. I'll give you the right, the permit to trade with Egypt. ויהי הם מריקים שקיהם, והנה צרור, איש צרור כספו בשקו. Keep telling the story to Jacob, and they say when they were emptying their sacks, and each of them found his money in his sack, in his bag. ויראו את צרורות כספיהם, and they showed the bundles of the money to the father. ויראו, and they all got very scared. Well, I think it's, they don't know how it got there, but it can be very good. You pay money, all of a sudden, you know, they probably were thinking they were framed. So I put the money and now they can blame them. You know, it's something like this, it's enough to start a war. You know, you stole from the second to the king. That's another reason to start a war, take over Canaan by the Egyptian. And there was a period that actually it happened later. ויאמר אליהם יעקב אביהם, אותי שיקלתם. You made me bereaved. This is, that's Yosef איננו, Joseph is not here, he's dead. ושמעון איננו, and now שמעון איננו. ואת בנימין תיקחו, and you are going to take Benjamin. עלי היו כולנו. All these things come to me. And here it's the first time you see that Jacob does not believe them. Oti shikaltem, you made me bereaved. He doesn't say, I lost Joseph. He said, you made it. He knows that they're responsible. I don't know if he knows. You know, he had dreams, he had a prophecy in him. But maybe he's just suspecting them. But the whole time he's treating them, he has to keep in his heart, Jacob, treating his you know, his sons and everything. And all the time he's suspecting, or maybe even knowing. Well, he can't know because, you know, Joseph is not dead. She called him, it means he's dead. Somebody close to me in my family is dead. But he has to keep dealing with them day in, day out when he's suspecting that they were responsible for the death of Joseph, Eineno. Now, it's the same Eineno, and I say, not here, used for Shimon, Shimon Eineno. He's probably suspecting that Shimon, that the story is not true as well, that Shimon is dead as well. He doesn't know that he's in jail. He just had to take them for the words, and he doesn't trust them very much because he said, Oti shikaltem, you are the one that made me bereaved. Alai hayu kulanu. All this is happening to me, not to you, not to us as a family. It's happening to me. And now you want the Benjamin, and now you want to take Benjamin as well. Benjamin, if you remember, is the youngest son. Vayomer Reuven el aviv lemor. And so Reuven said to his father, Et shnei banai tamid. You can kill both my sons, im lo avihenu elecha, if I don't bring him back to you. Tne oto al yadi, give it to me, and I'll bring it back to you. Think what I don't think it's evil. I think Reuven is just not very smart. We saw it a few times in the past. We discussed it just earlier. But now he said, look, father, you give me, I'll be responsible. And if I fail, kill my sons. He said, okay, I'm just lost. I'm going to lose 3 sons. And now you want me to go and kill 2 of your sons, 2 of my grandchildren? What kind of offer is that? As we see, Reuven is not strong, but he's not even smart. He has a good intention. He said, okay, trust me. Basically what he wants to say is trust me. But he doesn't say it. The condition that he said, it's okay, just, if I don't do it, kill your grandchildren. That's the reason Reuben never became the leader, and Judah became the leader of the brother, the leader of Israel. Reuben does not have anything in him, any leadership, any qualities that make him to a leader, except for a good heart. Vayomer, and Jacob said, Lo yered bni imachem. I am not going to let my son, referring to Benjamin, to come down with you. Ki achiv met, because his brother is dead. When he say his brother, they mean Joseph. You have to remember, Joseph and Benjamin, they are two young children of Rachel. Rachel was Jacob's favorite wife. She was the one when he just went and he saw her. He wanted to marry her. He worked 7 years and then got cheated and got Leah instead. So he worked another 7 years. Then she couldn't have children until a very late age. That's the reason she had Joseph and Benjamin. So she is his beloved wife. Went through so much in order to get her children, to have the children. And now I'm not going to give it. I'm not going to do it to her. One child is died, and his brother, they're going to kill him as well. Ki achiv met, vehu nish levado nishar, and he's the only one who is left to his mother, to Rachel. Vekar'au ason baderech asher telchu ba. And if there is a disaster happening on the way in which you will be going, the karau ason, a disaster. He doesn't say kill. Vehoradet, just say a disaster. Vehoradetem et sevati beyagon shaola, and will take me down to my grave. Mourning. So the whole idea is there's a lot of different subtleties, different way of reading it, and I think, I'm thinking of writing a blog post about it. And by the way, you can see all this on many of my lectures in short posts in my blog, thehebrew-bible.net. So there are many ways of reading them, but basically say, I will go all the way until I die. Mourning. At Sevati, when I'm old, very old, when my hair turns white, when my hair turns old, beyagon, suffering, and I will go suffering, she'ola. She'ola is a very interesting word, and I'm not going to get into this in depth again, because I've been asked many times, and the simple way to say is the grave. The Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible, does not define what's happened after the grave. It defines that there's a place that the people go to, but it doesn't mention what happens there. So there is a big discussion here, and I think that one of the next lessons I want to discuss the Sheol, the place that the dead go to in the Hebrew Bible. But as far as this one is concerned, say, you will take me down mourning to my grave, or as some people say, to the Sheol, to the place where the dead are. So this is the end of chapter 42. Next week, we will continue with chapter 43. Next week, probably we will not have it as a recorded class. So thank you very much for your patience, and sorry that during the recorded class we don't allow a free discussion, because it takes me completely out. As you know, it will take us into all kind of unpredictable discussion and directions. So if you have any questions, please send them to me either by email or put them on the meetup or share it with everybody else. And as usual, if it's something that interests everybody, I'll write a blog about it. And if not, I'll just answer it to you and to this group today. So thank you very much. And I hope to see you here at the same time next week. Bye.